Berlin-based blockchain fundraising platform Neufund grabbed headlines around the world earlier this month when it secured a partnership with Binance and the Malta Stock Exchange. Finance magnates had the opportunity to speak to Neufund co-founder Zoe Adamovicz about the inspiration behind Neufund, what the platform is hoping to do in the crypto space, and why Germany was chosen as Neufund's home base. So
Okay.
Zoe, can you just tell us, a little bit about you, your professional journey, and how you got involved with Neufund? Or is it? I'm sorry, is
Yeah,
it Neufund?
Neufund.
Neufund.
So yeah, exactly. So we like the kind of German twist on the pronunciation because
Mm-hmm.
we're Berlin based, so that's why we call it Neufund. Um, sure. So I've been an entrepreneur, kind of technology entrepreneur, more or less throughout my whole career, and the reason I became technology entrepreneur is unknown to me. It just kind of happened to me. So I started my first companies as a teenager. Doing some crazy stuff like like translation of telenovelas. Automated from Spanish into whatever languages were required, or some maps on the monochromatic phones.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so I was always interested in what is called frontier tech today. So back then it didn't have any name, but all these technologies that were kind of emergent and new, they would always attract my attention, and I always wanted to understand how stuff works technically, but also and then I later also went into studying engineering, but also how that influences you know how that influences society. Actually, how does it influence our life? What impact does it have on people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the broadly understood media, and I went to study sociology as well, actually, for that reason. But other than that, I
Mm-hmm.
studied a bunch of stuff, such as painting or movie direction, and also classical philology, for a bit, because I guess what I am very passionate about myself, is is building, is creating, and then you know and that not only that I build and create stuff, but also empowering other people to be able to do that. I sometimes, I said it once, and I repeat it as a mantra, and I think that entrepreneurship is almost like a human right, like, because everyone should be able to build things, and I always wanted to build things as well. And I guess that that all these interests combined put me, in building technology companies and in frontier tech, because one needs to be very creative there, because you typically build things that nobody built before, or
Mm-hmm.
that there is not many models for, right? So I wouldn't be very good at building, I don't know, an e-commerce platform or something like that, because because that's not my specialty. But my specialty is building stuff that is research, basically, right? And
Mm-hmm.
applying research. So and then I, except for two companies, most of my projects I've built with always the same guy. His name is Martin. He's my CTO, and a very good friend as well. So we've worked together for nearly 20 years, and he also studied sociology and informatics just like me. So we kind of met there, and we have combined interests, and Neufund, Neufund happened to us. Neufund happened to us, as an inspiration, from two things, from two sources. One was that the companies we had before Neufund, we made an exit to an American corporation, to a Nasdaq listed American corporate, and after an exit, just like it typically happens, we became executives, of this company, right? So you kind of need to stay with the acquirer for a year or a few years even, to work off what one calls golden handcuffs. So work with the acquirer,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we did just that. That was, by the way, in Israel, which we
Okay.
loved very much, because it was nice and sunny and very crazy and very techy. Um, and it was a listed company, right? So a publicly listed company, and within the time that we've been there, which was a year, the company went, I think, through two or maybe even three rounds of financing, which in 1 year is a lot of financing rounds. And for me, coming from the venture capital kind of experience, with this tedious experience of taking the pitch deck, every now and then when I need money, and going from one investor to another, and pitching the same story, and then building syndicates, and then answering the questions of all the associates, and and going through this really manual process of raising capital, looking at a publicly listed company, which I thought, well, IPO, when you do an IPO and you're listed, then it should be more difficult for you, right? It should be more difficult for a corporate to do that than it should be for agile, companies that are supposed to be growing fast and be crazy and break things. So I was like, wow, that's that's stunning. I didn't know it works like that. And more or less at the same time, the kind of ICO craze started, and also the DAO, which was this project in Berlin. I don't know if you guys heard about it. It was this one of the first ICOs that raised 200 million, and then there was this big hack, and the whole thing collapsed.
Yes.
So that thing happened as well. And we looked at this with Martin, and we thought, what, that's an emerging tech. We've been in crypto for a while, so we had some Ether and some Bitcoin already, and we liked it a lot. And it's so close to impacting societies with all these blockchain things. And although we didn't want to do any company anymore, we kind of planned to retire. We thought, like, okay, that's too cool to just let it go. So let's take these two things, and let's bring public fundraising to blockchain. Let's bring ICOs to first of all to the legal sphere. Of course, it's a big part of that, but also, and what I think is more interesting, although I want people to talk less about it, but let's create a token that represents shareholder rights, that is easy to acquire, that you don't need any brokers for, that you can easily issue, that you don't need to have $1 million to start off, to do an IPO, that can bear any ticket size, so you can invest in a company if you have €1,000 or €100 or €100 million. There is no ticket size limitations. Let's bring all that, and then let's do this within this amazing crypto community, which is an early adopters, tech, crazy tech frenzy community in itself. So let's just do all that, and let's open it up to companies that not necessarily are blockchain based, right? So any company can be a restaurant, can be Tesla, whatever. Let them all fundraise and build. So that was, I guess, the start.
Wow. Okay. So you mentioned, so there's no ticket size limit. So can anyone get involved with Neufund as an investor, or like what are the requirements for investors on the platform?
So when a company does the so-called equity token offering, so basically issues its tokens, which are blockchain representation of the company's shares, right? ERC20 tokens. Anyone who has some Ether or some Euro can acquire these tokens. I say Ether or Euro because this is the two gateways that we now have opened for payment. So, but of course, later it's going to be all cryptocurrencies and all fiat currencies. Ideally, let's see. But basically, any cryptocurrency holder or any fiat holder can buy these tokens. And the minimum ticket size that we accept, I think, is 1 Ether. So this is $400 today or something like this. I didn't check the prices today, but something around it at the moment. So, and then the investor needs to go through a KYC. So we need to come, because it is a kind of a public offering, right, within the German jurisdiction. So we have to comply with all the KYC laws. So you need to register doing a KYC, which is a process that takes about 10 minutes. So it's nothing humongous. Yeah.
And then as far as companies who want to use the platform to list themselves, what is the process for that? Like, is there like a vetting thing, or can anyone sign up?
So, in my ideal world, anyone will sign up. And in my ideal world, which is a little bit of a future world, because not all of this stuff we have implemented yet, the due diligence process and the kind of curation process is going to be, based on the smart contract, and it's going to be community driven. But we're not there yet. Today, what you do is, to be honest, at the moment, you just write an email to us and we kind of curate the companies ourselves. But we're gonna expand it, this year still, to allow for like a bigger pipeline. And then once and then you basically go to like an interface where you fill in some data, as in what your offering is gonna be about. So you need to say, for example, what I want to issue, 10 million shares at the price of €1 per share, for example, and then those shares, gonna, let's say that the token holders / shareholders are gonna have voting rights or not, or there's going to be a drag along provisions or whatever provisions that are in a typical investment agreement. So you configure this offering as the issuer, as the company. And so that's one thing. The offering is then kind of written into the ERC20 token. So all of this stuff all these parameters you configure, the platform turns into a smart contract and kind of spits or produces ERC20 tokens for you, and no coding is required. If you want to add some, let's say, you would call it utility functions. So let's say that your company, that it makes sense for your company to also have a utility token. For example, I don't know, you're a token economy yourself, or maybe you want your token to give access to certain APIs or whatever ideas. You can also add that, because again, this is an ERC20 token, so it's expandable. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing. And the second thing we need to do is to fill in a form, which is like, kind of like a, let's say, structured white paper or structured business plan that you need to kind of say, this is the company, it's what it does, this is the idea, this is the projection, and so on. And that stuff we actually, you need to do this in a format that we offer on our website, because this stuff is then going to be submitted with the financial authorities as a prospectus. So we also take care of this process for the issuer. And then, once you're ready, you press the button and then people can buy.
Fabulous. So where's Neufund in its sort of like life cycle right now? Are people already using the platform, or are people, if not, then are people like, is there a queue, or how is that working right now?
There is many queues. But we're a toddler, I think, right now. So we're already born and we're already existing, but we just started crawling. So there is a couple companies that we announced last week that already will issue the equity token offerings very soon. So there's a bunch of first companies that already kind of are ready, and any day you're going to be able to buy the tokens online. I think it's 5 or 6. We're going to be announcing a few more very soon. So the whole platform and the product is ready, and the pipeline of companies to be presented to the investors is already there as well. And really, any day you're going to hear some announcements from us about that. It's the issuers that announce, so we are not imposing any timelines on it. We just wait for them to tell us, okay guys, tomorrow, so that's one. The other thing that is ready is that Neufund is a decentralized platform, right? So we are a lot more than just a company that is helping you with doing your ERC20 token and all the regulation and legal bit about it. We are also a token model, we're a token economy, we're a decentralized system. And what it means is that, we have our own token that's called Neu, and this token is given to people who are providing the useful work to this ecosystem. And in an investment ecosystem, useful work is, of course, investing in companies. Just like, in Bitcoin model, useful work is electricity, right? So the miners are providing computing power or electricity, if you want to go level down. And for that, once in a while, they mine themselves a Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. In the investment model like ours, the miners are the investors, and whenever they invest, they get some Neu tokens, right? And this way, if you invest more, you have more Neu tokens, you have more, you're a bigger part of this ecosystem. And we asked, in December last year, we wanted to kick off this platform by building a community of people around us who would be interested in investing in this kind of format. We wanted to test whether there is simply space and whether there is enough open-mindedness among the investment community around the world to invest in this kind of format, to buy equity tokens. Can the funds at all even buy it, right? Some funds are restricted in buying certain types of assets. So we did that, and we did what it was called initial community or initial capital building mechanism, ICBM, where I reached out to like a broad network of VC funds, private equity funds, corporate funds, business angels, crypto whales, that we know and people around us know, and we gathered about 1,000 investors who parked the money on our platform to invest in the future. And for that, we also issued to them already some of the Neu tokens and decentralized ourselves nicely among them. So that's where we are right now. There's a bunch of people ready to invest, and there's a bunch of companies ready to start.
Okay.
And we're gonna be doing the first offering very soon.
Great. Okay, so I'm curious. Will Neufund stay on the Ethereum blockchain for the foreseeable future? And I ask that just because there's, recently the launch of EOS and Tron and these big kind of really hyped up networks that are also claiming to serve a similar purpose, but with much faster transaction speed. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, when we started Neufund, it was 2 years ago nearly. There was Ethereum, and then nothing, and then maybe some patches on Bitcoin. But there were no other real smart contract platforms, and Ethereum community was by far the biggest and the most dynamic one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Neufund started on Ethereum, because the choice for us was Ethereum or our own blockchain back then.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Ethereum was the choice. Today, I don't know what we would have chosen. I mean, I still really like Ethereum, and I like the way this is done, and I'm actually a big fan of Vitalik, and I appreciate that there is such a strong, you would say, modern kind of leader, because he's more the inspiration, right, for the community. He's anything else, which is, I think, the future of leadership altogether. So so I believe that Ethereum might solve a lot of its problems. And even here in Berlin, when we see the dev office of Ethereum is here, and there's a bunch of other Ethereum based companies. So when I see how much brain power and how much dynamism is put into solving the problems of this platform, that I think that that there is a high chance that some of this is gonna be solved. Well, except for the throughput, and the scalability, what I think is an even more burning problem, which we in Ethereum community don't maybe talk about as much yet, because there's actually not that many working applications on Ethereum platform, right? But for us, it's a real problem. Is that the prices of gas are not really decoupled from the prices of Ether. So if Ether is going up, then on one hand I'm very happy because I have some Ether as well. So as an investor, I'm happy. But on the other hand, my cost, of processing of the smart contracts becomes, sometimes outrageous, right? So I never know on the cost side of my company how long my runway is, because it's dependent on the fluctuations of Ether, because we pay to Ethereum platform, right, in gas for the processing. So
right.
So that, I think, is even more burning issue, because if we have another CryptoKitties disaster, and then or some whatever, or someone says that Ethereum is not a security and the price is going to skyrocket, then I might need to go to real VCs to ask them for money to pay for processing power. So that's I think this is a bigger problem, because it's not really a technical problem. The technology for this is there, but this gas market somehow doesn't work, and nobody really knows why. But truth is that that there is that Ethereum is extremely expensive right now. To build anything on Ethereum is very expensive. If you compare it to Amazon, that it's outrageous. And Amazon Cloud, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that competitors will appear, and they might improve on that. And then let's see what happens. I mean, we're gonna do what's best, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also curious. So, Neufund is incorporated in Germany, is that right, or is it in Tel Aviv?
No, we're incorporated in Germany 100%. I just go to Tel Aviv
Okay.
because there's a lot of surfing going on. But no, we are 100% incorporated in Germany.
Okay, so why Germany? I mean, I'm guessing that you might be from Germany, but we always hear about Switzerland and Malta and Lithuania and these places that have kind of opened their regulatory doors to blockchain and crypto firms, and we don't really hear Berlin so much, we hear about it as a spot for conferences and for meeting and for collaboration, but not really as a place for basing very many blockchain firms. So I'm just curious why you chose Berlin to build Neufund.
Well, so look, you mentioned Germany, and then you mentioned Zug, which is one canton in Switzerland, and Lithuania and Malta, so one big country and a couple of smaller ones, right? So, and Germany, Germany always has the same problem for centuries right now, or decades at least, which is Germany has the best product and the shittiest marketing. For whatever reason, the German government just cannot sell, the what's going on here. And I'm actually part of the innovation council at the in the German, under the German Minister of Digital here. So I even spoke to her about this a little bit, because we have all of this. I mean, we have everything that Switzerland has and more, but we just don't talk about it,
Okay.
And on the other hand, you see, the advertisement of the so-called crypto valley, so the Swiss government, or maybe the Cantonese, maybe it's on the federal level, maybe it's the canton government, is buying sponsored posts in the German newspapers to promote the jurisdiction. But Germany would never do anything like this,
Oh, right, I see.
Yeah, so but the truth is also that of course we're also, by the way, setting up an operation in Malta, and we're very close with the government there, and I think what's going on the island is amazing, but we can talk about this a little bit later. But the truth is that there is a lot of regulatory arbitrage going on in the world right now about who's gonna regulate the stuff in the most sensible way.
Mm-hmm.
Countries like Zug, it's a brass plate canton, so there's a lot of, so they have a history of hosting companies and being a tax paradise and so on. I'm not that familiar with Lithuania, so I can't comment on this. Malta is a tiny country, with 450,000 people, and a very dynamic and a very amazing government, so they can afford to put blockchain as the priority for the government, which Germany cannot really do, because we have refugees and roads and unemployment and things, so it just cannot be on top of the list.
Right.
But Germany is also doing a lot of great stuff. It's just a lot more careful, and Germany is very reasonable and unfortunately very quiet. The law in Germany is, well, truth be told, we're still kind of waiting, for this, one politician that's gonna just stand up and say blockchain welcome, just like Merkel just said once, refugees welcome, because that's what German government thinks, but German government just doesn't say it. Mm-hmm. The law here is good. I mean, we've been operating, and we consciously chose this law because we wanted to be not some tax paradise company, but we wanted to be a proper company. So we've chosen this law. We've been in touch with the financial supervisory authority here for 2 years now, and this dialogue has been good. This dialogue is extremely sober and extremely logical, which I actually appreciate. There is no uncertainty here as much as there is in the US, for example, because, in the US, I don't know, I mean, it can go left or right. They can outlaw the whole thing altogether, or they can open up altogether, because it's a bit more of a war between Silicon Valley and blockchain and Wall Street there, right? It's like, who's gonna lobby the government more, Goldman Sachs or Sequoia Capital, right? It's kind of, that's a little bit how this law there is being created, and the US changes the opinion and approach all the time. But Germany is predictable. It's a solid, good piece of law that is just 50 years old, because it was written just after the war, unlike American law, which was written in 1700 and just amended since. Mm-hmm. So it works. So that's why Germany, and of course Berlin, historically has been a hub for anything related to cryptography, to privacy, right? Mm-hmm. And to it's an old capital of spies as well, right? So there's a lot of experts here, and I guess that attracts as well.
Right. Okay. So in an ideal world, where do you see Neufund in 3 years?
In an ideal world, Neufund is 100% decentralized. So I hope I'm gonna be redundant, and that all Neu tokens are issued, and that we manage to provide for a governance model within the economy that's gonna kind of self-propel this whole fundraising ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
In the ideal world, fundraising for everyone on blockchain is, easy enough to, for even, small startup entrepreneurs to be able to pull it off. So it's, it's a lot, like thousands and millions times easier and cheaper than doing any kind of IPO and any kind of VC round. And in an ideal world, we have like a very cool mix of, I would see a very cool mix of, of projects on the platform, ranging from, I don't know, banks, maybe some community-owned crypto banks, to art projects, through factories, to Tesla, to whatever. So that's the ideal world.
That sounds amazing.